Now, a man who spent a decade working in communities around Uluru has accused white bureaucrats of misrepresenting Aboriginal law to push their own agenda and have the rock climb closed. Matt Cunningham, our Darwin correspondent, of course, has prepared a special report ahead of the rock's closure, the rock climbing closure next weekend. Matt joins us now live from Darwin. Matt, this is a very divisive issue. What have you uncovered here about how the decision came to pass?
Well, Chris, we've tried to canvass as many views as we possibly could on this issue. Obviously, it's one that is dividing Australians at the moment ahead of that rock climb closure on October 26. We heard a bit earlier today from Joe Martin-Jard from the Central Land Council putting forward the case for the closure of the rock climb. But while I was down in Central Australia, I also spoke to a man by the name of David Hewitt. Now, he spent 10 years working as a building supervisor in communities around Uluru, including Docker River. In fact, in 1972, he led a work party of 15 Aboriginal men from Docker River who actually built the first store at the base of Uluru, at what is now the community of Mutijulu. Now, David Hewitt, he says that when he was there in 1972, there were Aboriginal people who had no problem with white people climbing Uluru. He said that there were also Aboriginal people, including traditional owners and their children, who were climbing Uluru at that time. He believes that the push to close the climb at Uluru has been driven by white bureaucrats, including people from Parks Australia, because they're concerned about the potential legal and financial ramifications of people getting killed or injured while on that rock climb. Here's a bit of what David Hewitt had to say.
I think a lot of the information being provided these days is totally inaccurate. And from my experience, Aboriginal people have never, certainly to me, they've never expressed any concern about people climbing the rock. They've climbed themselves. When I was working there in 1972, they were aware of many whitefellas climbing, as well as Aboriginal people. And they never expressed any concern. And it's only in recent times, I'd suggest from about 1992.
As I said earlier, Chris, it has been an issue that has divided the nation. Now, we did spend a couple of days there at Uluru just over a week ago. I can tell you, I've been to Uluru several times. I have never seen crowds like the ones that were there, both at the township of Uluru and at the rock itself while we were down there. In fact, we went out there on the Friday morning to the base of the rock climb. We got there at about 6 a.m. and there must have been close to 1,000 people who were queuing up to try and climb that rock. That's, in fact, led to some people to raise more safety concerns about the number of people who are actually on the rock attempting to climb it before that deadline closes. But certainly it's an issue that's dividing plenty of Australians, and one that we cover in full tonight in that special report that will go to air on Paul Murray Live.
Yeah, Matt, it's a fascinating issue. I've spoken before about how I wanted to climb the rock and was prevented by weather conditions and these rules they impose. There's been a lot of speculation in recent years that they're deliberately shutting the rock as often as possible to keep numbers low so they could ban it. There are government edicts along those lines as well. What intrigues me, and I've said, though, I accept that if the local Indigenous people, as the owners, if they want to ban it, they've got every right to. But when you've been talking to people about this, Matt, what I'm interested in is whether there's ever been talk of a compromise. If we're worried about, you know, people doing dangerous things and dying on the rock, or people defiling it with toiletry needs and whatever, or not respecting it, why haven't they looked at organised climbs of the rock, perhaps led by the local Indigenous people, where people might pay a fee, have to go in small groups, go up with some assistance and guidance and make sure they do the right thing and learn a bit about it? Why wouldn't that be a way to manage this rather than just have either open slather or nothing?
Well, it's interesting that you make that point, Chris, because if you go right back to the late 1960s, early 1970s, according to David Hewitt, there was a traditional owner, an Aboriginal traditional owner from Docker River, who was actually giving guided tours of Uluru, of the climb at Uluru, way back then. And it is an idea that has been raised recently. Adam Giles, the former Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, during his term in office, he actually put forward that idea. He said the Anangu people should be benefiting from the number of tourists who go there. They should be benefiting in a business sense from those people who want to climb the rock. And he said, he suggested that Anangu actually run guided tours of the rock. Now, they, of course, had a meeting a couple of years ago where they decided otherwise. They put forward a proposal to Parks Australia that the rock climb be closed for spiritual reasons, for cultural reasons, but for also some of those safety reasons that you've said. But it is a really interesting debate, and that certainly has been part of that debate and has been something that has been suggested. But I can tell you that after the rock climb closes on October 26, it's going to be pretty difficult for that to happen because the contract has already been awarded and work will begin, I'm told, as soon as the Monday after the rock closure to actually remove the chain that presently is on Uluru, to have that infrastructure removed. I think it'd be a pretty difficult ask to try and then reinstall it later on if they wanted to start doing some of those guided tours that you speak of.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Look forward to your report on Paul Murray tonight.